Welcome to the Boss Mode Podcast, where we discuss artificial intelligence and the future of work. Today we have a special guest, a good friend and longtime mentor to the entire Korean startup community, CK. He is the founder and CEO of Saywise, a platform that makes it easy to become a podcaster on platforms like LinkedIn. And podcasting being, I think, a secret weapon, just a fantastic way to do marketing these days because you get the authentic founder's voice and short form video that can be distributed. And that's long been an interest of mine. So I'm excited to have CK here. Prior to founding Saywise, CK founded Tapas, which was acquired by the WhatsApp of Korea. Tapas was a webtoon platform, and that acquisition took place for over $500 million, which is pretty exciting.
Thanks for having me. Speaking of Kakao, so David, you and I go way back, and my full name is Chang Kim. Now I go by CK, and it's been a few years because after selling company to Kakao has this culture of, they're like forcing everyone to use English name, even though they're a Korean company. So I had to come up with something, but then I didn't want to, I was old enough to not wanting to come up with any random name. I didn't want to be like a Brian or like Jordan or whatever. Right? So I was like, all right, how about CK? And then they were like, yeah, that works. So I'm CK now.
You prefer CK or do you prefer Chang?
I go by CK. Yeah. Even before Kakao acquisition, within my companies, people call me CK. So I'm very familiar. And besides, that's my Starbucks name as well. And sometimes they actually go to the trouble of spelling like CK as SEDKAY at some Starbucks. So yeah, maybe that's a Starbucks thing. Yeah, but very good to be here. Yeah, great to meet you, Dee, and great to catch up as always, David. It's always fun to talk to you.
Likewise. One of the themes that comes up frequently here on this podcast is the importance of education and the role of education, especially today as it's evolving. You know that you studied in the United States, but you also studied at the top college in Korea. I'm curious to hear what your thinking is on, at the time when you were studying in college, what was the importance of that experience for you? What did you get out of it? And how might that have changed in today's environment?
As we all know, I think AI is a big topic here, right? AI is changing the education, the meaning of it fundamentally right now. And I know partly through my son's experience. So my son is applying to college this year, actually, it's this fall. And his intended major is art history, philosophy, and basically all the majors that you cannot make money from. And it might be a different story now, right? Because, all this, who would have thought like computer engineering majors would have some difficulty getting a job, right? So things are really changing fast. But if I think about my own experience, I think the difference between the Korean education and the US education, I think was back then, I don't know if it's how much of that is true now, but the ability to question things, like asking the right questions, right? And if you think about it, asking the right questions is actually the solution to a lot of problems. If you want to solve problems, then you have to define the problems. And oftentimes it goes back to your ability to ask the right questions. But a lot of times Korean culture doesn't really allow, hey, you have to ask questions. So a lot of classrooms are like a one-way information delivery, like the professor would be like teaching some stuff and students will just write it down and do like a problem solving, whatever, which like obviously the information delivery is a very important aspect of class, but it's not the only aspect of the class. It should be more like two-way conversation, two-way Q&A question. But yeah, the US, a lot of like education, and this is funny because like a lot of Korean students, when they come to the US, they are hesitant to ask questions during the class. They think it's like disrupting the flow, and the professors are like, hey, any questions? And then you will see like sometimes Indian kids asking a lot of questions or other people. Koreans, they don't really ask questions and think it's like disrupting the flow, or you don't want to take up some other people's time. That's a cultural difference, right? Because some other people think that asking questions is actually actively participating in the class, the form of it. And just by not asking questions, you might be seen as, hey, you're only taking stuff out of this and you're not really contributing to the class. Yeah, like that was one of the things that I noticed as a difference.
Now, the Korean education system, I think, is famous for being incredibly rigorous. And my own, I guess, experience observing my sister's education, for example, who studied, but part of their education was in Korea. They had such a grasp. They were so far ahead in their early years that by the time they got into high school in Canada, it was just a lot easier for them. They were able to pursue some creative interests, partly because they knew how to learn. They knew how to study, which might not be the same as knowing how to learn, but they knew how to study, certainly. And they had such a grasp of the semantic knowledge that they were able to invest their time in different and meaningful ways. And you went to the top college in Korea, Seoul National University, which is incredibly difficult to get into. And it's so different. And for those who don't know, getting into a Korean college is very different from getting into a top American college, where in America we have, what is it, the ALBC, Athletes Legacy Dean's List. So people who are donating and children of faculty have a tremendous advantage in getting into the top colleges. Whereas in Korea, there's none of that. You do very well on a test or you don't, and your performance dictates which college you can get into. So I wonder, there has to be some benefit to the incredible rigor that goes into the Korean education system, or do you think that's less important?
I think it's important in the sense where you are, I guess like the similar thing applies to like sports teams or people who went through the sports programs, right? Which is not necessarily the skills, but also the fact that they went through the discipline, right? So it's, oh yeah, you did like years of sports, which means that you had to wake up at 5:30, you had to make it to the facility and practice and whatnot. I think that people who went through all this like really difficult filtering system, one thing for sure is they went through this discipline, and you can assume they're like high achievers and they know how to manage themselves, right? But the sad thing that I hear these days is, so even when I went to college, SNU, it was like once you get in, it's you started exploring, right, the world, and then you join the clubs and you like make friends and stuff. We did a lot of drinking as well, socializing, right? But I hear that these days, college is just another high school. Like you get in and then you start studying even more because you have to go to the right graduate school. And after graduate school, you have to get into the test and then to become a doctor, a lawyer. And there's like all these additional steps. So I hear that in Korea, a lot of college students, it's like a almost a different form of high school, like even more competitive in a sense. So I think that's really
Wow.
sad because, yeah, like in college, from college, you're on your own and then you have to explore the world. That's what you should focus on. But rather, people go back to books and libraries. And yeah, that's sad. But yeah.
Hey, so CK, so I'm super curious, right? So I grew up Chinese Singaporean, feels like similar type of parenting or just adult children relationship there where, you know, you're meant to be seen, not heard. Don't ask questions, don't interrupt, keep your head down, bury into the books, all that. When you were in SNU, do you remember if you were in there with a desired outcome in mind to go, I'm picking up skills here to start my entrepreneurial journey. I'm picking up skills here to start a career, just have a foundation, or I'm just here to the typical, for me at least, Asian thing, which is I need the certificate to be able to go get a job. Do you remember where it was for you throughout your navigation?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I remember because I grew up in a household where my father was a university professor and
Oh, wow.
very
Okay.
typical, you got to be an after lawyer
Yeah.
environment. Yeah, I was a pre-med student. So that was one of the reasons why I transferred to Michigan because my father asked me, hey, go to the US university and then become a doctor there. So for me, entrepreneurship was never part of the plan
Wow.
so I came back to Korea after college to serve in the military because every Korean man has to serve in the military. And then
In Singapore.
oh, yeah, really?
Yeah.
So that's when I found there was a special program that let you work in. So this was like during .com, and the Korean government created this program where, hey, like certain people, if you work in a tech company, then like work for 3 years, and then you're like serving the military duty. So it was really great deal. And I got super lucky to get one of those opportunities. And that was a startup. So that's how I got into startup. But until and before, I had no idea at all. And I thought I was going to become a doctor, even though I had no idea like why. I never questioned why I should be a doctor, but then I always thought that I would become a doctor. So I was doing like pre-med programs, just like many other Asian Americans.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like people
Wow.
my age, like Asian Americans, it's, oh, what did you major in college? And then they're like, oh, like pre-med. And there's 17 others who are like, oh yeah, were you pre-med? I was pre-med too. So, yeah.
That's wild. That's wild.
Earlier, you were talking about how it went from this highly competitive race to get into college. And then once you're in college, experience a little bit more freedom and branch out. But today, you're hearing that the experience in college is, again, another highly competitive race in order to be vetted and prepare for now graduate school. And I have to think that when we go back to when we were younger, the availability of information on a candidate, on a job candidate, was actually quite low. You've got your resume, you've got your specifications for the individual, and that was it. These employers needed to make a decision on the future ability of this individual to make an impact on a company or on the world in a broader sense. And that was really difficult. And one of the ways to do that is if you do look at the top school on the CV, then you can get a sense of the individual's grit and resilience and willingness to work really hard and succeed within a system. And those are valuable to any company, I believe. But today we're in a very different situation where the act of creation for any of us, the obstacles to creation have come down so far that rather than looking to a college degree as the proxy for determining is this individual able to make an impact in even dynamic, undefined situations, that's something now that more people are able to demonstrate evidence of by actually creating value, whether that's an art project, whether that's a company, whether that's a piece of software. That's something that just about anybody with creative vision and a growth mindset is able to demonstrate, which I think is probably more valuable to look at as a data point when assessing an individual's suitability for a job.
Absolutely. I expect college degree to be, I don't think it's going to go away, by the way, because it has been so much historical. There's alumni network and brands. At this point, like all these universities, they are like one of the biggest brands. Like I went to Michigan, which happened to be a good, big football school. And then like the brand, merchandising, sports, it's just crazy, a huge industry. So I don't think college as a brand is going to go away, but it will not be the only one, only way to express. So I think it's going to be more like a portfolio approach where everybody will have to build their own personal portfolio. It can have multiple different components to it. College brand could be one of them. But then even now we're seeing like something like Peter Thiel, what is it? Thiel Fellowship, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. That has
Probably the number one indicator of becoming a unicorn, even greater than YC acceptance, it's Thiel Fellowship acceptance. More
Right.
billionaires on a per accepted member basis come out of the Thiel Fellowship than YC.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, so Thiel Foundation has already become that brand in a very short amount of time. And then YC, as David mentioned, is another brand. Your GitHub account or your app that has been downloaded like 10 million times. So I think people will need to take this portfolio approach. Now, one thing that everybody needs to do really well is to create that portfolio. And that goes back to storytelling and content creation. So I think the common element here is everybody will need to be able to create their own portfolio and create the content and stories behind it. One of the things that I really admire David for is his storytelling ability. David, you have a really amazing storytelling ability. And even the company Vanka that you have now, and then I was asking, hey, what's the story behind it? And then you were telling me the novel, and that was really amazing story. So storytelling is going to become more and more important. And people who know how to tell their stories and people who know how to create their own portfolio, they're going to be the ones who will be, yeah. So it's not just about what school did you go to and then your resume, but it'll be like a total package of your portfolio.
That's a brilliant way of thinking about it, because absolutely, I totally agree that colleges are such a tremendous brand. And to the extent that I can't remember who originally said this, but someone told me that the world's most valuable brand, even more than a Tesla or an Apple, and this was 2 years ago, granted, the world's most valuable brand, he said, was Harvard. And in the past couple of years, Harvard's taken a bit of a hit in terms of brand perception, but nonetheless, I think over time, that value will persist. And the same applies to the other Ivies and the other really big schools here in the US.
You don't bring Harvard stuff to Donald Trump.
Seriously. Oh my, yeah. I love hearing that, because I think that's something that anyone who's going through their earlier life or earlier career life right now, I think that's super valuable advice. My kid is turning 21 in March. He's doing a double degree here in Queensland at a local university.
Wait, seriously? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You look like you're 30, 34.
Yeah, we're all Asian. We all look like we're 34. It's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, I'm 41. My wife's 43. Nat had Finn, my stepson. So Nat had Finn when she was 23. So he's 20 now. So it's funny having a grown-ass man in the house and hearing all of his university stories of, yeah, we've got this group project. It's for an engineering course, and there are 4 of us, there are 5 of us, and the other 3 are just sending back like this AI slop, and now I have to clean all of it up. So what the heck am I going to do? I can't go back to AI because it's just going to more slop the slop. And so it's a very interesting time where there are assignments they have to do, and I guess in engineering, and not software either. He's eventually going to go into, I think, mechatronic engineering. So from all these small little projects can really start to build up that I've done this or I've interned there. I come from a very different discipline, right? Like I went to film school, yet another one of those where you can hardly make money out of it unless you're like in the proper region, like LA or even New York, for example. But we were all about portfolios. No one cared about where you went to film school. They just wanted to see what type of work can you actually put a film together? And I would imagine if you're a software engineer, it'd be the same thing. So show me what you've built, not where you went to school. I don't sure you can, there's an assessment you have to pass, but what else you got going on there? It's a fascinating time watching 20 somethings, the different cohorts, especially the marketer, I think in cohorts and think in generations, the 20 somethings, the 30 somethings, the 40 somethings, and even the 50 somethings, the way that they interface with the available tools right now. So social media back in the day, and then you got the boomers trying to be like, what is a poke? Why am I poking someone? Remember back, yeah. To then blockchain, and everyone thinking blockchain was going to be the thing. And then, what was the name of that app? My God. The voice chat one, Clubhouse. Everyone thought, all the VCs thought Clubhouse was going to take over the entire planet. And then now with AI and the different ways that they're using it, are you noticing, again, because your kid's around that same age also, are you noticing the disparity in how, when someone says AI, what they mean and how they use it?
I mean, it's just, if you think about this, we're still very early in this, right? Like ChatGPT broke out in what, like 2023 or
2022 November.
So it's been like 2-3 years. So we're very early in this. So by the time our children become adults, what kind of world are we going to have? I have no idea. So I think it's very hard to predict just because we're so early in this. But in terms of the usage versus the potential, I don't know. I expect that there will be some sort of messy initial period where we're going to see a lot of AI slop, as you mentioned, but then people are going to wake up to that reality. And then, hey, this is the world that we want to live in. Everything is just like AI created. And then, what's going to be the human's role, right?
Do you think we're there now? Do you think that we're at that kind of like people starting to wake up period like now?
To a certain degree, yes.
Okay.
Because I think people are starting to see the potential downside of it. So like fake videos, right? You can't really tell already to a certain degree, right? AI generated videos and real videos. So it's very confusing, and then in some cases dangerous, right? It can affect the political outcome, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think we're already there in a sense where some people are questioning, hey, is this the kind of world that we want to live in? So I think it's going to pull back a little bit where authenticity will become more important, and people will be questioning, hey, what is the unique role that humans will have to play? And then how do we distinguish the human created content and AI created content? And yeah, my understanding is like some people are still already working on this, but I think we as a society will probably try to think about, hey, what is a happy medium? Because you can't turn back the clock. You can't get rid of AI at this point. So you have to use AI. So what is the really good way, ethical way of using AI? I'm a techno optimist. So eventually I think we'll figure it out.
Yeah, because the genie's out of the bottle.
Looking
right?
at what some artists have been doing in film, for example, I had, D, while you were away, I did a podcast session with Karsten Weingart. He is a film producer. He is a director. He produces commercial films, mostly around sneakers. And he would use traditional techniques. And so he's well-versed in that. But he became AI curious and he began experimenting with AI. Now, this is an individual who, as using traditional techniques, was skilled in the art of having a vision, a creative vision, and executing that creative vision through the work of others, right? So you'd have people come in and do the camera work. And he did some of that as well. You would have actors. So he wasn't in front of the camera typically. You would have actors, or you've got the people who actually make the shoe that he's making the production of. So he benefited from the work of many others. Now, the interesting thing is, one day when Karsten was producing an advertisement, he thought, what if I were to do all of this with AI? And so he produced a piece first using a fusion of traditional techniques, filmmaking techniques, even with the physical filter in front of the camera. It's called a ghost filter. It worked out beautifully, but he also layered in AI characters, AI techniques, and that video went viral. Now, really, as somebody who has the creative vision and is now directing a piece of work, what is the distinction between him putting humans to work and putting AI to work? The importance of him having that creative vision and directing that vision remains the same. That work is just now accelerated. And what we're seeing is not only is it accelerated, but the barrier to entry is lower. So now someone like me, who doesn't know how to produce a commercial film production at a high standard, maybe if I were to make an ad, and actually I've made ads for my work in my previous company, and I typically didn't do a very good job of it when directing myself, because that's not me. That's not who I was. I don't have the skill in filmmaking with those techniques. And so my ability to do that was quite poor. But today, I could hop into AI and I don't have to hire a bunch of people, because frankly, knowing how to hire those people is a skill set as well. Knowing where to go, knowing what rates to set as compensation, knowing what expectations to set for them, all of that is a part of the work of the person who is directing this production. And I didn't know how to do all of that for that particular use case. But today with AI, I can skip a lot of that and just speak a few words into Sora 2, and then it makes an advertisement for me, right? But the quality that you'd get from someone like me who doesn't have enough of the directing and leading expertise within that domain is much lower than somebody like a Karsten Weingart who has experience. So I might argue that what we're actually seeing is the acceleration of and the amplification of individuals with an experience in setting vision, creative vision, who yes, have a growth mindset, but also understand how the pieces work. And that applies to, I think, just about any cognitive domain today. So I think that, yeah, we see a lot of AI slop, but if we look to the people who already are experts, what we're actually seeing is just a much lower cost in a time cost and dollar cost for them to express themselves at a very high standard. And I don't know
absolutely.
that that's a thing.
Yeah, so in that sense, AI is ultimate leverage. It can be, right? So it can allow people who are already good, like even better, right? So I think that can be a really powerful impact of AI. So it's going to allow creators who are already good and are already creating content, create more in terms of quality, quantity. It may or may not turn like crappy creators into good creators. I think it's much more likely that it's going to turn great people to produce more great content than the other way around, like turning crappy creators into good creators.
I have a hot take on this. So here's my hot take, right? You guys ready? In the world of AI slop, and I see this a lot as like, I've been in this game strictly in performance marketing for what, 10, 12 years now. And it's the same as advertisers. So I see all the AI slop, and I actually wonder if 50% of the AI slop are people that are just looking to, oh, this stuff is super easy, I'm just going to crank out more. And then there's the other 50%, which I tend to sit in the camp of, who are working through the AI slop a little bit like a musician works through, oh my God, I'm just trying to put a song together. The first 12 iterations are going to be absolute trash, but I need to get the trash out before I can get to the refinement piece. So I'm playing, but I'm publishing what I'm playing with. So I think there's that also, because to you guys' point, the cost of tuition fees, right, to it becomes so much lower. As a filmmaker, to get to your first bug in your film, you have to get all the actors, make sure it doesn't rain if it's a sunny scene, and then go into the cutting room floor and go, oh shit, we didn't get that one scene. Whereas now you can just prompt it and go, okay, I've learned from this, but I can still patch this thing up. I love and that's what I tell Finn, my kid. I'm like, the tuition, the cost of fucking up is so much lower now. And I absolutely love that. Hopefully there's some application in philosophy and in art history and all that too.
So yeah, it'll definitely help, because everything, like earlier, we were talking about storytelling. And if you think about prompt, like a lot of that is storytelling, right? And like the depth of your knowledge, the depth of your creativity directly impacts your ability to prompt. So yeah, all the philosophy majors, get your high hopes. Yeah.
And by the way, just by the by, small little plug for Saywise here. I didn't know what Saywise was or that it existed until like prior to this, when David sent me stuff to do my homework, and I poked into it and I go, this thing is perfect. Because for someone like me, especially, I work off of the creative friction and tension of dialogue. And I'm just sitting here going, if that dialogue is there, it's so difficult. We've all watched podcasts, and certain podcasts, you can see that there's no chemistry because the dialogue isn't there. It feels a very rote type of tennis match where they're just serving to one another. There are no curveballs and there's nothing fun going on. And then there are the ones where there's a lot of chemistry, and that's where a lot of great dialogue happens. I think Lex Friedman is a perfect example of that. So I looked at a tool like that, and you were bringing up philosophy before. I almost wonder if I've seen a few custom GPTs do that, where you can almost act as if you're speaking to one of your favorite philosophers.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what we're trying to build here. So again, we were talking about the AI
So cool
before. So like we want to almost take things upside down, where we're still using AI, but then try to help humans create their authentic stories. So in a way, it's another content creation tool, again, focusing on genuine kind of authentic human stories and insights. Because one of the thesis that we have is, if you think about Google search or even ChatGPT, everything's based on what has already been published in the world. But what if there's a lot of intangible knowledge still trapped inside people's head? And there's a lot of like, if you spent, let's say you're like Amazon's purchase manager for the past 20 years, you will probably know everything about the purchasing program and like logistics and all of that. And then chances are these people have all this knowledge, but then they have never published yet. Even these people, they love to tell their friends about their work. If someone is like, hey, can I pick your brain for a 30-minute Zoom call? They'd be happy to share, like verbally, because verbally sharing to a friend is much more easier than writing like a newsletter or blog post. We're trying to bring leverage the easiness of conversation into this, but the ultimate goal is to use AI to bring out the human insights and knowledge.
4 years ago, I got invited to be a course contributor for founder.com. The Founder magazine started like years and years ago. And when they approached me, I go, guys, listen, they go, D, why haven't you dropped a course or some type of paid program or something on how to start your teach other agency owners, because you grew your agency pretty quickly. And I go, because I have a lot of trouble organizing my information into a cogent course, like step 1, do this, step 2, do that. You sit me down, you ask me stuff, I can talk you through it. But for a course where someone can go through that, I have a lot of difficulty and I don't have the time to do that. So they go, this is exactly why we have an onboarding program. So their onboarding program was not 12 weeks leading up to the filming day. And once a week, I would meet with the course producer and he would just ask me a bunch of questions. He's not from my field. He just happens to be someone with a pedagogy background. And he would just tease questions out of me and then organize that into a Google Doc. I would sense check that. So when I saw Saywise, I went, oh my God, this thing plugs right in. This is amazing. Even for someone who wanted to string all those together and potentially create a course. I don't know if that's like within Saywise's type of product roadmap, but I'm going, this is great.
Yeah. So interesting experiment that we did earlier this year was we actually opened the service based on like human to human interaction first as a way to test the flow. And then, so it was like AMA product where we use a human host and then human guest, and then a guest comes out and then there will be like a live audience and then they will be asking questions, so on and so forth. We knew that we were going to build a fully automated AI driven product, but then before that, we wanted to test run it using humans. So something that we found was humans are great, of course, like we're all humans, right? But in many cases, humans are not really great at asking good questions. They ask the same questions repeatedly. They ask sometimes really dumb questions. The worst is like we see people are trying to pitch themselves in the form of questions. So you know what I'm saying? It's like a question, but in reality, you're like trying to pitch yourself or your product, and it's like really bad. Yeah, we thought that if we can have AI learn high quality questions, engaging questions, personal questions, AI can actually do a pretty good job asking good questions to humans. And then from there, like we're trying to capture again, like human content, original human voice, because we don't want like AI to produce all the content automatically. That's producing AI slop and it's just convenient, but then it's not really capturing the human original insights. So we use AI as an interviewer. And then of course, like as a curator, like you can say things in a very unstructured way, but then we're also using AI to capture the essence from your unstructured conversation into something that you can share on social media.
Now you're making me a little self-conscious here, Chang, because I'm one of the early Saywise.com users back when you were the AMA platform. And I think I probably asked a question in maybe 2/3 of the AMAs that I attended. So now I'm wondering, oh, geez, where do my questions rank on that? Why Chang decided
your
to say,
questions
no
were
more
good.
humans.
No, your questions were good.
Hey, listen, I volunteer as tribute. I'm one of those shameless assholes that does not worry about asking dumb questions because I love being the dumbest one in the room. So if you ever have a future experiment where you need a human guinea pig, more than happy. But yeah, the
Good to know. Good to know.
The question brag is super cringe, though. I totally get the question brag thing where it's like part question. So asking for a friend, if they were in Harvard trying to raise a start, I'm like, bro, stop. You're come on, everyone.
I totally agree with you.
We literally had someone. So we also had an in-person event, and then we literally had one person. So there's like a VC panel, and then one of the people we opened up, and she was pitching her company for 3 minutes. We had to cross. Oh man, I get it's like entrepreneur hustle, of course, great. But then in front of 150 people, live audience, it's not the best venue to pitch your company.
Totally. But shoot your shot.
Yeah.
Respect, girl. If you're watching this, girl, respect. Shoot your shot.
I
Read
might
the
say,
room.
though, that the ability to play the long game is an important skill for entrepreneurs. But I would go even further to say that the ability to not play the game and focus on just what's truly interesting to you and truly worthwhile in that value exchange of ideas amongst people, that really is key to establishing thought leadership as a symptom of, or a side effect, as an effect of those authentic conversations. And hopefully the use of an AI director, as you've implemented it, will guide people to behave in a way that's better for themselves. So you're using AI to automate away some of these bad behaviors from humans. And to be transparent, I think that there might be a little bit of overlap between what Saywise is doing and a part of what Vanka is doing. But nonetheless, I have no qualms about recommending Saywise for folks who are looking for a podcast solution because it's something that solves a specific problem. And I think that the way that you're going about it is fantastic. And we've spoken a couple of times about the idea of using video interviews for the purposes of marketing. So I'm a huge fan of not only you, but also the work that you're doing.
Yeah, this
Right.
thing is super cool. So I am a student of Toyota Lean. I had Toyota Lean drilled into my head years ago voluntarily because I went to go seek out a Toyota problem solving and Toyota management coach a few years ago. And content creation is such a great way of, as much as all the Gen Zers or all the people who teach content creation and how to be successful talk about the outputs and the hooks and all that type of stuff, it's such a great format for refinement of thinking. So I think that's why, again, I'm gushing about the whole Saywise thing here, but I use AI a lot. It'll just be a GPT plus plan. I'll activate voice and I'll just use it as a thought partner with a whole bunch of just stuff about me and its knowledge base to go, what questions am I not? Some questions I'll ask would be like, what questions am I not asking right now, just based on our conversation that I should be asking? And so even from a content creation standpoint, I was looking at Scott Galloway and in the demo little piece on the homepage, the Will I Ams and all that, just answer questions. And to even see their faces go, never thought about that. And then they're answering the question, just the whole, oh, wow, this is an interesting question that I haven't thought about or hasn't been phrased to me in that type of a way. That's a really great way that I've noticed myself using Gen AI, because it's difficult to find friends who can stoke your mind that way. You have to kiss a lot of frogs sometimes, or be a lot of events where someone might be pitching a room for 3 minutes and you're like, this is a waste of my time. I'm just here to look for friends that can enrich my mind.
So one thing that we're finding is in terms of talking to AI, it's not going to replace human to human conversation.
Of
Like
course.
what we notice is like people feel comfortable for a different nature of conversations in like between talking to AI and between talking to humans. Initially, we were trying to see if we can altogether replace humans with AI, but then that's not the right approach that we thought. What we found was people feel comfortable in different avenues. For example, like AI, conversation with AI, it's non-judgmental, right? So like people feel much more comfortable talking to AI in certain areas, but not as comfortable in certain other areas. Those are more suitable for human to human conversation. But that being said, there are areas where people feel more comfortable actually talking to AI, which is why we're seeing the therapy apps. Like someone was telling me, like one of the solopreneur ideas that somebody built was, it's like an AI divorce lawyer or something like that. Because yeah, divorce, I'm sure there's a lot of emotionally difficult conversations happening there. So like people feel more comfortable talking to AI about those stuff. Same for like therapy, same for like companion, like character AI. In some cases, some subculture like waifu culture, that's like huge. And the point being, like there are certain types of conversations where people feel actually more comfortable talking to AI than to humans.
Yeah, it's easier to cover topics that might be a source of even some hidden shame with something that to not be human, that won't be judging you as a human would, something with the transient memory of an AI.
Right.
100%.
Chang, I want to go back in time a little bit again and compare and contrast. I wonder, as an entrepreneur in your earliest days, what are the things that kept you busy as a startup founder or as a member of a startup versus today in the age of AI, where a lot of folks are using AI to augment, accelerate certain work streams or operate as a thought partner in some cases? How is it different? What kept you busy then as a founder versus what's keeping you busy today as a founder?
There are elements that are the same, and then there are elements that are different, right? I think dealing with humans for the most part is the same factor, right? You had to spend a lot of time dealing with humans, dealing with people back then, and now as well, right? Because you have to work as a team and you have to convince people, sell your vision. So all these people to people, like human to human part, I'm not sure if like how much AI helped me shortcut it. I think that we're spending equal amount of time, largely speaking, working with people. That being said, like a lot of tools definitely brought a lot more productivity, right? Even like Figma, it's like a lifesaver in a lot of cases. I wasn't using Figma before. So then what I would is like just verbally communicate to like designers or like product managers, hey, this is what we want to build. And then they would try to interpret that as like some sort of design. But now we're like communicating directly on Figma, and that's cutting so much communication time. So that's one example. AI definitely brings a lot of productivity to a lot of different things. But yeah, one thing that stands out, I think, in terms of the area that I think I'm spending equal amount of time is human interactions.
That's interesting because I think back to something that I think it was Larry Page who said just a few months ago that he uses AI to evaluate his employees, for example, to see who needs to have a promotion. And it identified in one case an engineer who wasn't on the radar for promotions. And when the AI recommended this to him, he surfaced this suggestion to his senior team, and folks said, "Well, yeah, that makes sense." So it went over the head or under the radar for the humans, almost like a human doctor missing a critical diagnosis on an X-ray, but then the AI picks it up. It's the AI picks up the human success story that the human executives otherwise would have missed. So I think that there are opportunities to even accelerate the human interaction layer in many ways. Have you seen some of that, or is that still not inside the scope of how you've begun to deploy AI inside of your practices today?
I don't know. This is not exactly AI, but like one example that like your story reminds me of is, so like this is pre-AI, but we were using, in my previous company, we were using a software called Lattice, Lattice. So it's like a human resources management application. And one feature in particular that we really enjoyed using was one-on-one features. And what it did was recommending the right questions to ask for weekly like I had one-on-ones with a lot of people. And then I think I was pretty decent at it, but I also looked into how other managers were doing one-on-ones with their direct reports. And then sometimes it wasn't very good. And because going back to earlier, we were talking about a lot of humans are not really great at asking the right questions because we're not trained, right? We didn't have a chance to be trained on it. Not everybody had a PR training. Not everybody had a manager training, so on and so forth. Lattice would be suggesting, oh yeah, this might be good AI one-on-one questions. And then some managers were not necessarily copying exactly or following exactly, but then using them as cues, which definitely helped the one-on-one sessions, right? So yeah, that can be like one example of how technology can augment or amplify human relationship.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I wonder if AI, a large language model, was used to maybe evaluate the context of that person's activities and then recommend topics for the one-on-one, which sounds like a fantastic use of AI that reduces the cognitive load on both parties in that conversation, enables them to context switch into this one-on-one effectively in a minimal amount of time. So effectively and efficiently, and then be human together. Because diving through and reading all these reports and everything, in a world where we have infinite time, we could do that, right? But in a world where we are time constrained, 24 hours a day, 7 to 8 hours of sleep, commute time, et cetera, all of this, there's a limit, and time to do work on your own, time to actually be creating your own work product. There's truly is a limit to the amount of time you can spend preparing for that one-on-one. And so the act of offloading that one-on-one prep to AI is actually something that enables you as an executive, as a founder, to be more effective and more human with more people.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that you mention it, I'm sure they used not necessarily LLM, but some sort of like large data processing to learn more about not just, so the learning could have happened within the context of previous one-on-ones and exchanges, but also you could imagine where, hey, what if AI can learn across the world, across different areas, and then try to pick up the best practices of one-on-one questions, right? And then try to democratize or propagate the best practice to a lot of people by giving easier access, right? So you can imagine if AI can do a really good job of propagating or democratizing the best practices of certain people to a lot more people, so suddenly it opens up a lot more business opportunities, right? What if we can learn the best practice of recruiters and then make those available to every recruiter out there, or even automate some of it? I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity coming from that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is my wave of magic wand wish. So CK, out of curiosity, because you're talking about one-on-ones, your manager's having one-on-ones, was it a multinational, like international team, a lot of different cultures in there and time zones and stuff, or was it primarily? Yeah,
We were primarily US and Korea.
got you. So maybe just primarily two nationalities that you have to. So our team, so half my team's in the US, half my team is Aussie. We've got a few Kiwis, a fair few Filipinos, and South Americans as well. So you've got and a few Scandinavians who have moved to Australia. So you've got this huge, and I don't know if this is true or not, but you play along with me here. As individuals who are of migrant upbringing, we tend to have a special ability of seeing contrasts between the way we interact with Western folks versus the way we act with our own people. Dramatically different. I think if our Caucasian friends saw the way we acted with our like motherland friends, they'd be like, "Whoa, you're like a different person almost," right? Sometimes, and vice versa. So I think we were afforded the privilege of that contrast. And I took it for granted, but when I started this company and started running it, I go, "Oh my God, I've got my very direct Scandinavian team talking to my very meek and shy and sometimes false affirmative type Filipino team, and then got like making my Filipino team just completely cry and say, "Oh my God, this person's like a savage, brutal feedback giver and so rude and whatever." And I watch the recording, I go, "Oh my God, it's because they're both speaking English, but also not speaking the same language at the same time." So my wave of magic wand wish is if the cultural nuance can be baked in there somehow as well. Oh, that'd be amazing. Amazing.
When I
Yeah.
see CK and I speak with him in Korean, it's very different than when I speak with him
course.
in English, because in Korean, at the moment I see him, I'll say, I'll bow at precisely 62 degrees and I'll say, 안녕하세요.
62 degrees. Funny story. So I shouldn't name the name, but then it's fairly obvious at this point, Kakao, right? Because I sold my company to Kakao. And like, as a Korean, I was very familiar. I also worked at Samsung as well. So Korean big companies, there's like certain style of communication. It's like rallying the team, but they're using like, oh yeah, we're under a tremendous amount of pressure from the competitors and we need to do better than this. I'm so used to them. Yeah, sure. It's like a company lingo.
So
And
is it just so I can keep up speed here? Is it just like hyperbole? Like everything's always tremendous, incredible, insurmountable? Is that the vibe?
More like a artificial sense of like threats.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Under competition, and we're like, we need to work better. We need to do better than this, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
So in Korean culture, it's accepted as a very normal thing. It's, oh yeah, like it's rallying the troops kind of message, right? But then our mother company, they sent an email on January 1st as a New Year thing. And then that email was like full of those comments. Like, we're under tremendous amount of pressure, blah, 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 blah. We need to work like 10 times harder and blah, blah, blah. And then as a Korean, I was like, oh, this is pretty normal. But then some of the American colleagues, they were like, are you all getting fired or something? Is company in trouble?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do I need to call my wife? Do I need to have a conversation with my family right now about what's going to happen in 3 months' time? Yo, I don't know where to. I'm same in Singapore, right? You get an email like that, you're like, yeah, this is business as usual. When are we not under immense pressure? When are we not behind the competition? Wow.
Well, on a related note, a bit of a tangent, but another topic that has come up a few times on this podcast is the idea of jobs and the loss of jobs or the difficulty in finding jobs. I think certainly at minimum in the US today, we're in a low hire environment where many companies are no longer hiring. I think that McKinsey recently laid off, I think it was 11,000 people, or announced the layoffs of 11,000 people. And I think it was Walmart that said that they would freeze hiring. And now they're looking at getting more out of the people that they do have with AI. And I imagine A follow-on to that would be that those whose jobs would be made redundant by these hyper-efficient individuals that are empowered by AI would then in phase 2 lose their jobs. I wonder what you guys' thoughts are on the shift in labor towards just a very small number of people who are empowered, who have this co-intelligence with AI. And what does that mean for young people who are now entering the workforce? So your college grads, your college students, what does that mean for these people? How can they handle that? How can they react to that in a positive way? And then what does that mean for the people who are, in addition, re-entering the workforce because they have lost their jobs?
I wish I knew the answer to that. That's a question that I also grapple with a lot these days. Honestly, I don't think I have a good answer. I don't think anybody has a good answer. But one thing that I expect is it's going to be, unfortunately, obviously inevitable that we're going to see at least like a short-term pain until I'm sure like in the future, there will be like new jobs being created out after all this. And historically speaking, we've seen like even jobs like UX designer is relatively new. And these jobs came after the invention of Photoshop and all these tools, right? Whenever there's a new technology that comes around, like typically new jobs are being created based on that. But then like it's really about the short term, like the next like year or two. I think the world will continue seeing some struggles from these layoffs and lack of job opportunities, especially for new grads and junior people. I think that part is almost inevitable. And I also expect that the emergence of like solopreneurship and one-person business will continue just because there's not many opportunities. And the tools, as you mentioned, David, is becoming more and more powerful. So yeah, theoretically, people can build great businesses as a one-person team. And is that going to be the case for everyone? No. Just the fact that like everybody can build a one-person company, it means from competitive perspective, it's crazy, right? Like all of a sudden you're competing with everyone else. I think the chance of like you making it becoming successful is actually more slimmer now, just because there's a lot more people thinking the same as you. But the movement, I think, will continue happening just because there's not as many opportunities and the tools are becoming more powerful. Yeah, again, I wish I could know the answer, but yeah, that's the same question I also have as well.
Yeah.
But what do you guys think?
My thoughts on this are that, yes, we'll see a shift towards solopreneurship, and that's fundamental to the hypothesis behind Banca. But an extension of that is that today we only have 6% of the US workforce working as solopreneurs or freelancers, contractors, that kind of thing. And I think it's 11% of the workforce that are working in companies with 20 or fewer employees. I think what we're going to see is, yes, a shift towards solopreneurship. So that 6% will probably become something in the range of 15, 20, 30% of the workforce now is a solopreneur. Partly because they're forced into it, but partly because I think that a lot of folks will feel empowered by the shitification of the startup experience. I just invented an official term.
No, but it works so well. It's so understandable.
Yes. There's just so much stuff that doesn't truly add value to the startup experience. This is very low impact stuff as a founder. These are the necessary evils. If you don't file your taxes, trouble. If you don't form an entity, trouble. If you don't do your bookkeeping, trouble. Like all this stuff, like it's trouble, right? So I think a lot of that stuff gets automated. You've made podcasting easier. I think that within Vanka, overall, we're making the marketing experience along with the financial, et cetera, all that stuff. So a lot of us are working on making a lot of these lower value tasks and even some of the higher value tasks automated so that founders can do more as an individual and don't need to just imagine the amount of time that goes into trying to find a co-founder, for example. So to be able to defer that until a slightly later point, because you can create more value yourself and get to some initial proof of concept, proof points. And it's so much more helpful, de-risking even the co-founder acquisition process. So I think that, yeah, we'll see more solopreneurs, but I think we'll also see more solopreneurs getting a little bit more traction than they otherwise would have, leading to them needing to bring in other people. So a lot of very small teams. So I think that the number of people that are in that kind of 20-person company size will go from 11% of the workforce to something much, much larger, probably in the range of 50% or more, encompassing those solopreneurs. So I think that this becomes a healthier, kind of more distributed and just fewer eggs in fewer baskets approach to ensuring that there's economic participation. Because today, so many people work for companies that are 100 people or more, 1,000 people or more. And that is just concentrating so much risk. It leads to companies that are too big to fail. Because we think about the bank bailouts, the auto bailouts, part of the rationale is that they employ so many people that even when they mess up to just catastrophic, unimaginable degrees of incompetence, we're talking about governments giving them billions of dollars simply because they employ so many people. So I think that we'll end up in a place where a lot of folks are able to put on, and that's the idea of this podcast name, the boss mode hat, where even an employee working in a company, more employees can put on a boss hat, a management hat, and manage the work of some automations. They structure the work, because what is a manager? What is a boss? What is an executive? It's somebody who has a vision for something that has not yet happened and structures work to make that thing happen. Finds people, defines roles, finds people to do the work, manages the work, motivates people, rewards people, and makes sure that things get done. That's frankly something that even the most junior employee in a company, I think, needs to be able to do. So I think that for a young person coming out of college, the number one thing that they can do is, first, don't rely on the college degree that you just acquired to get you the job. You need to put yourself to work right away to prove yourself. So maybe it's, if you want to go to an investment bank, maybe you're putting together briefings, you're putting together memos through the use of AI to learn how to do it, first of all, and then gather the information, run some analyses, and then put together a number of reports, maybe start publishing that stuff. Heck, you could publish a podcast about that on Saywise. So do the work and then hop into Saywise, give it enough context, and then have it ask you questions and produce content. So I think these are the practices that any job seeker will need to do. And maybe they even turn that into a business if they want to get a job.
Yeah, it reminds me of someone, this was like a way back, but like somebody, I think he eventually got hired by Microsoft or something. And then so he was a designer, UX designer, and then he didn't do any resume, he didn't apply to any jobs, but then he was like pro bono, like on his own website. He's like redesigned products. Like
Oh, I love
this
that.
is completely for free. Like I'm reimagining the design of Google Meet or something like that. And then he got hired by Microsoft. Yeah.
So the film director that I mentioned earlier, Karsten Weingart, that's exactly what he did. So he in the industry, in the creative industry for filmmakers, I think they call it speculative work, or spec work for short. And what they'll do is, without contacting the brand, they'll just do the work for the brand, reimagine their work exactly as you described, CK. He designed a video for Nike and it was for the JA3 basketball shoe. And he made this fantastic video in 3D, and I'll send it to you afterwards. And the shoe was designed it was a Velociraptor variant, and it had some pink tones. So he used Higgsfield to generate an image. First, it was Google Nano Banana, and to generate these Velociraptor characters that were pink as the dominant color. And then he put that into Higgsfield with Kling 2.5, I think, and now I dream maybe. But then he generated this video, posted it online. It was fantastic. It looked like the kind of thing that Disney would have produced. Posted it online. 1 million views plus within the span of just a couple of days. One of those viewers was the original shoe designer who watched the video, sent him a DM saying, "This is exactly what I had in my mind when I designed this shoe. Thank you so much." And guess what comes out of this? I'm sure this guy's going to have work lined up with brands like Nike.
Yeah.
So speculative work might be, I think, the single best thing across any industry for somebody who is early in their career to do, to establish themselves and show that, hey, I've got creative vision and I know how to structure the work in order to get it done. Somebody like that becomes invaluable as a hire.
Yeah. So why don't you do some spec work for politics and become the next president?
I am unqualified. I'm a Canadian citizen.
At this point, anybody can do better.
And I don't know that I'd want to be the Prime Minister of Canada, nor would I want to be, frankly, President of the United States. Lots of far more qualified people than myself. But yeah, I think that we are just in this golden age right now. Like I feel blessed to go from, a lot of folks are unemployed right now. And I think that a lot of folks are depending on the idea that a company's going to hire them. And they're putting in a lot of work, right, to send out the resumes, try to get those interviews. I think that interviews are few and far between, really hard to get to right now. But even for those who get to the interview, it's really hard to establish yourself and truly demonstrate that, hey, yeah, you actually need to bring me in because I can do a better job than AI would on its own. So you need me to put AI to work for you. And I've also done enough research and learned about your business that I'm able to integrate with your team quickly. So just a lot of very important, not just signals, but proof points to demonstrate. But that's possible now. And I think that today, just as a creative individual, I think that it is possible to be more human today than ever before. Because AI means I don't have to deal with a lot of the stuff that was too expensive or too difficult or too time consuming to do in order to express myself. And I think that applies to just about every single profession.
So, David, you mentioned we're living in such a special moment of time. And what I'm seeing is obviously this is also connected to the longevity because people want to live longer because they want to see where this world is going to. Like somebody mentioned that, what is it, longevity escape velocity or something like that. It's like almost like a singularity point for longevity, where past this point, certainly people will die. They're not going to live forever. But then in terms of like getting old, you're dramatically, and then people generally live more healthier. So
The
like,
latest number that
the latest
you
number
remember
that
the number of years.
the latest number that I heard was 2030. So somebody actually called it out. Like by 2030, we're going to reach that point where longevity is going to have a breakthrough moment, and people are going to be aging significantly slowly, more slowly. But we'll see. But the larger point here is AI is taking over the world. And then there's a lot of these secondary opportunities coming from this AI revolution. If the first order opportunities were like ChatGPT and Anthropic and just building the infrastructure layer, then, now, you have to see, hey, how the world is changing based on this AI revolution. What are some of the other areas that are being impacted, and how will people live in 5-10 years? And longevity, definitely one of them. And then generally more entertainment, like people have more free time. So people will probably like consume more entertainment content. That could be another potential second order impact. But yeah, there's a lot of fascinating kind of conversations about, hey, what might be like a secondary effect of AI?
Where's
Yeah,
your head at
and
with
heck,
that? Where are you guys' where are you guys' heads at with that? What other secondary, like as an example, my livelihood and my business only exists because Zuck decided, you know what, I'm going to build this ad machine thing that's based on some type of engagement graph, and I am a beneficiary of a second order effect. I think a lot of full-time content creators are the beneficiaries of the boys back in the day that created this thing called YouTube, where people thought was only going to be cat videos, and look at where we are now. So what are some other, this is a very fascinating part. Are there any other second order effects that, I guess, if layer one is the Bitcoin and the Ethereum, what's the layer two?
Yes. Yeah. Layer two. The layer two.
Yeah.
This is a bit ironic, but I think the emergence of in-person could be one of the second order, in-person networks, like the physical meetings and events. Like ironically, right? Like the emergence of the third places, thing that people that will want to actually gather more, and then in person. And then also things like eating or like any physical activity, they cannot be replaced by AI, right?
Yes.
yeah, I
for
think
sure.
that human experiences will be at a premium, and those who can afford it will place great value on anything that can be attributable to human origin. So whether it's a physical product made by hand, or food that's made by a human, or the opportunity to sit down in person with a human. I think, and Chang, you mentioned the waifu and the relationship chatbots. I think that, and Gary Vee, I mentioned in a previous pod, and this is something that brings me tremendous sadness, the idea that there are so many young people who are adopting AI relationships. I think that it's akin to the Sackler crisis in the US with opioids. I think that it is the next drug here in the US. But I think that the idea of human intimacy and human relationships and human marriage will be something that is a premium experience as well, that will be out of reach for so many, which brings me tremendous sadness. So yeah, I think human experiences in general are going to be valued more than ever before. Part of that is wonderful because it's great that we value it more, but part of it does bring me some sadness because if it's out of reach for a lot of people, that's problematic.
I mean, we might actually see there's another sad, like if it does happen, it's going to be another sad phenomenon, which is going to be like even more divide between the haves and the have-nots, where the haves actually might go back to enjoying in-person activities, and maybe those become more luxury items. And then the digital becomes like the junk food, right? Like the rich people, it used to be what used to be the consumption, that the products for the rich people once become commoditized, they become the product for the poor. And then the rich, they go back to, it's like meat, right? Like meat used to be only for royalties, but now like poor people eat McDonald's, which is cheap meat. And then rich people eat salads, right? That's right. So like,
No, it is, folks.
Golf, another example where, anything that's like a finite in supply, ultimately it tends to become consumed by the rich people only. So yeah, the in-person can be the new golf course. In-person can be the new whatever high-end product. And then there might be like more, and then like people in the lower kind of hierarchy of the society, they might be like living in cheap digital virtual world like 24/7. But I really hope that's not going to be the case. But yeah,
read Ready Player One and then saw the movie. How many years ago was this? And what struck me about it was how dystopian it was, where everybody was living inside of their VR headsets. And you had these incredibly just morbidly obese people who were just going for dopamine hit after dopamine hit. And part of it was celebrating the democratization of advanced education because it was delivered centrally to a very high standard, personalized. And yeah, that's idealistic, but the moment they took that headset off, the squalor in which they lived, it was terrible. And I have to think that as long as people do embrace true creation, as long as people set aside a lot of the reasons to not create, then the simple act of creation, the act of creativity, which I believe to be that which is the most human expression, then I believe that people will be able to, in the next 2 to 5 years, I think there's just tremendous opportunity for people to get a foothold outside of the salary mindset, outside of the paycheck mindset, because paychecks are going to be volatile and risky because you're depending on someone to afford you the ability to survive day to day. I think that in the next 2 to 5 years, for those who do embrace the idea of equity and building equity, I think they'll earn that ticket to prosperity, which I'm hoping will be the majority of people, but we'll have to see how that plays out. And D, I think that another secondary effect of what's happening with AI is, I think, friction. A lot of the friction will go away. So something that affects you, commerce, I think that commerce will become frictionless. I think that today there is tremendous gamification or tremendous gaming that's required of the system to draw in the users to make purchases. But I think that as AI or these virtual assistants become very intelligent and aware of my preferences and needs, I think that the requirement for me to proactively purchase something will start to fade into the background, and that a lot of the commerce will take place in a frictionless manner.
Possibly. I've had a lot of time sitting on a plane from San Diego back home. And you know that phase where you're sleepy, but you can't sleep. So you've got some notepad out and you just write down some crazy shit. So I was reading back on my crazy shit notepad earlier this week. And one of the questions, so from a commerce standpoint, I go, yes, we have GEO right now instead of SEO, and demand predicting is definitely a thing. However, what happens to the discovery element, right? I know what I want, and it knows what I want, and knows what I need, but where's the discovery portion of that, which is a lot of what the interruptive marketing does, which is shows you something new potentially within a lane of what you need or what we think you need. Maybe not to the creepy level where, that horror story from years ago where Walmart knew that the girl was pregnant before she knew she was pregnant, and then her home started getting flyers for like baby clothes and all that because of all the predictive analytics. And her parents were like, oh my God, what's going on here? They're not to that crazy degree way back in the day before Cambridge Analytica and all that. but there's that discovery element. So that was one of the few thoughts that I had in there. And then the other thought that I had, I wrote down in my kind of sleepy haze, was what if AI, and CK, like you said, is super early now. What if AI 5 years from now, 10 years from now, is crypto now? So when it first started, everyone was like, oh my God, this thing is going to take over the fucking world. No more government. And people were just going crazy. Bitcoin, do you know about Bitcoin is $700 now? Governments have no more control about us, sovereignty. And then now crypto.com is still having to be on UFC, still a bunch of money like sponsoring. On-ramps are still super difficult. And I just Googled just before Bitcoin got invented 2009. Ethereum got invented 2015. So it's been 10 years now with ETH and all the different cycles in between. And we've seen several bull and bear runs and different types of, from DeFi through to meme coins, through to everything in between as the secondaries to the primaries. CK, as you were talking about that. So that was one thing that I wrote in there too. Really keen to hear what you guys think about potentially that being the thing, because we were very excited. Like tech was very excited about blockchain technology and cryptocurrency technology back in the day too.
Don't you feel like AI is already, even before going to 5, 10 years from now, like already it feels more mainstream now compared to crypto? Yeah, AI already now feels sufficiently different. It's a lot more mainstream. It's touching a lot more people in industry. So I think it's a lot more mainstream. And by the way, speaking of coin, I was talking to someone, one of my family members, and he started tech, and then he made a lot of money from Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Let's go.
So I was like, so I'm just curious, who told you about this? Because I know you're not in tech, and somebody must have told you. And then, do you know what he said? He said it was me. So I told him. Apparently, I was told because I knew about Bitcoin, I knew about ETH because I'm in tech and I'm like following the trends. So apparently, I told him about this, and then I didn't buy, but then he bought.
Amazing. Midas touch right there.
Yeah, so another secondary effect.
So the reason why I came up with that crypto thought, that equivalency, was because we were in San Diego. I was at a diner, and this is in downtown San Diego. I was at a diner with a few buddies, and the table across from us is maybe some 20-somethings and their parents. So their parents they'd probably be like what? Either young boomers or very elder millennials. And the daughter goes, I was using ChatGPT, and the parents go, what's a GPT? And they were going through the demo, and then the next table over leaned over and was like, oh, can you show us what's going on? I'm going like, wow. Because it's so easy for me to be in the circles that I'm in. But when I'm in a diner, I went, okay, this is very interesting here.
So there are people that don't know about AI. That's novel to me as well. I think that the hype related to AI, there was some hype, and that was the AGI hype, the Skynet hype. And I think that we're at the point now where folks understand that AI is, as what we're calling AI, is these large language models that are trained on language. It's the entirety of recorded human knowledge that is available on the internet. So AI is that, and the rapid use of that. What AI is not yet is the stuff that is inside of here and inside of here. AI doesn't know that. And the stuff that is just generally like the soul, what we amorphously, ambiguously refer to as the soul, AI doesn't have any access to that. It has access to expressions of it, but it does not have root access to the soul. And for that reason, I think that this domain of very human being tremendously valuable makes a lot of sense, because it's not, knowledge is now available at close to zero incremental cost. But soul is only accessible through the instances of true human interaction. And so I think that what this means is that the hype cycles around AGI, we don't have to worry about them. Now, what is happening today is we're seeing massive investments in physical world AI. Tesla has long been the leader of that, and Elon Musk in general. And we discussed it on the pod here, where with Neuralink and with the Teslas gathering real world information, they've got this tremendous advantage in terms of an understanding of the way humans think in the real world. And that doesn't exist in any other large language model. NVIDIA, of course, is now investing in that and the other foundational models. But even then, I don't think that we run the risk of AGI So the crypto moment was for AGI, but in terms of large language models, no, absolutely. I think those are already mainstream. I do think that maybe you were in a strange cafe. Maybe you stepped into an alternate dimension for a few minutes.
See, because being a performance marketer, that's almost my job, right? Whenever I'm on planes, on trains, in public, I'm always that creepy guy looking over shoulder to be like, are you on TikTok? Are you consuming IG, TikTok? Like, where is your head at? Because I'm an attention grabber. Like, I get paid to grab attention and convert that into money. So
You used to have free access to that data through Meta.
Yeah,
You
completely
supported all that
subsidized
information.
and exactly, completely subsidized and sponsored. But that behavioral stuff is so fascinating to me and always has. Maybe that's why like growth marketing has always been my thing, because and that's maybe what caused me to ask that question, because crypto marketing in itself is such its own thing, right? It really was its own beast, and the way that people got fascinated by it, the way that people getting fascinated by AI, there are so many different entry points. Some of it is like absolute doom and gloom. Your entire feed could just be like, it's taking our jobs and Skynet is here and you can't tell who is who. And again, in my little hazy thing, I wrote down AI, love is blind. Imagine if I was an absolute sicko film producer working at Netflix, I would go part human, part AI. You don't know who's behind the wall, and you win a money prize if you can tell, pick all the AI ones and all the human ones. It might get greenlit in Korea, because I know like Physical 100, its own romantic Squid Game.
We should start to land this plane, borrowing your language, D. But I just want to add one last comment on crypto. I remember the moment when I thought, okay, we've definitely hit peak bubble with crypto. I was walking into the subway station at Gangnam in Seoul. And as I was going down the stairs, it was blanketed in celebrity advertisements for crypto exchanges. And there were ads for meme coins. And I just thought, now they're going after folks that have zero knowledge, very little ability to make an informed decision, and trying to persuade them to make purchases because they like that celebrity. And that's a point when I just think, wow, it is so devoid at this scale. Yeah, I think there's value in crypto, but at the scale that they were pushing it to at that time, it was so devoid of value for more people that they needed the celebrity endorsements in order to.
What year was this?
Probably like 2018, 17,
Yeah,
2018,
shit,
2019, something like that.
Look at us today. Price of Bitcoin's going absolutely bananas, all that crazy. It's funny how we extrapolate things into the future, and the narratives that we tell ourselves, target versus actual, predicted versus actual. Since we're landing the plane, maybe we can leave some stories or takeaways or just cautionary tales for our younger selves. One that's going into possibly art history and philosophy. Another one is doing engineering right now. For those guys and gals, I would imagine it'd be a really confusing time for them. CK, if there's some nuggets there that perhaps you'd love to share, David, yourself too, that might be a good way to land the plane.
Going back to my, like earlier, I was talking about how like colleges, you need to broaden your horizon. You need to get as many different experiences as possible. That's gonna broaden your mind, and that's because, as David mentioned, creativity, the creative tools, there's no barrier. So anybody can become a creator. And the moment they decide to become a creator, there's so many such powerful tools available to you at a very cheap price. So it's really about who comes up with the idea, who comes up with the creativity. And creativity doesn't just fall from the sky. And I think it's to a certain degree directly proportional to the amount of experience you have. Like the amount of people that you have spoken to, the amount of books that you have read, the amount of interactions that you had with the world, right? So travel like crazy, read like crazy, meet people like crazy, not just the people in your bubble, right? But just go out of your comfort zone and, go to people that who may not be in the same circle as you. So if I go back to college now, then I'll be probably just like doing the minimal work to get like pretty decent, okay grades, because that's also important, to be honest, right? So you shouldn't like fail, but then I'll probably just like minimum amount of time in studying And then instead, I will do anything because there's no failure cost when you're 20 or 19, right? So you can do anything and you can fail. So I would just do anything, join the clubs, join whatever, try to meet some random people, try to go to random places. I will try to get as many experiences as possible.
What phenomenal advice. That's and if I were to, the best I can do is perhaps expand upon that and build upon that. The idea, I've described it in the past as it's important to create more than we consume. But an important precondition to creating is to have vision. An important precondition to having vision is consuming experiences more specifically, engaging in experiences more specifically. And what you described, go out there and live. Talk to people outside of your comfort zone, yes. Love, laugh, cry, suffer the painful indignity of failure. And all of that will create this tapestry of you that has something to offer the world. And that very special person that everybody, every single person has the potential to become will, I am certain, absolutely certain, have this tremendously valuable vision that they can express. And the cost of doing that expression, manifesting that is so low today. It's going back to when I was a kid, it was so hard, like to learn how to program, to learn how to build the relationships to get a supply chain, to get a retail distribution deal, all of this. Like that's not necessary anymore. It's accessible to create. And I'm not saying you have to create a business, right? It could be a beautiful work of art. It could be maybe thinking, I'm going to make a short film. It could be, I'm going to paint a masterpiece, or the closest thing to a masterpiece that I can do, and the ability to learn how to do that. It's all so much more affordable today that yeah, if you go out there and live a little or live a lot, that's going to be possible. So I do hope that folks will take your advice on that, Chang, because it's a more human experience as well. It's more human than it is to be in that rat race on that treadmill. And I think too, I laughed inside when you mentioned, Chang, if you were to go through college again, you'd put in a minimum. I spoke with the founder just yesterday, who was telling me that while he was at Michigan, while he was at Michigan, he was studying math and computer science. And he did not enjoy taking the astronomy classes that he was required to take. So he built a cheating app. Without endorsing the idea of cheating, he built a way to, like a Cluely, where you just double click on the question and then it will select the right answer for you. Now he was able to fly through the course and focus on the stuff that he really cared about. So maybe my last extension to that, and it hard to call it advice, but just yeah, there's something to think about for the younger generation, is find something to obsess over and just dive deep and love that process.
Yeah,
Amen.
nice.
How about Dave? What is your parting words?
So I'm gonna talk to you like the way I wanted to be talked to at that time. Okay, guys and gals. So listen, bro, sis, go listen to Uncle CK, go listen to Uncle David, and here's what Uncle D has to say. Don't forget inflation. So what I mean by that is, right now, GPT is $20 a month. It's not gonna be $20 a month forever, right? Cloud Code is max is like $200 a month. Guess what? These companies right now are subsidizing the shit out of this stuff. So if you want to play around, use $20 a month now, because it's like we don't know when they're just going to be like, guys, we got to really monetize this. $2,000 a month might not even be out of the question. Flights are going to be the same. Like all this stuff that we were talking about before, where the real stuff becomes more valuable. We don't mean just valuable because it'll feel nicer. Whenever something feels nicer, is more valuable, more scarce, prices go up. So do all that stuff now. And sure, you might not have enough money because you're in college, you're eating ramen and all that type of stuff, but go to the buffet and taste as much of what you can afford as possible, because the affordability only goes down, not up. Take it from someone who runs like meta ads. CPMs only go up. It never goes down ever. So take Uncle CK's advice, take Uncle Dave's advice as much as possible, and never forget up only. So make sure you do it today. That's
Great.
me. Inflation.
And if you are a direct-to-consumer brand, despite the CPMs always going up, D and Right Hook Digital will find a way to keep your ROI in line.
Nice.
We just try to find ways to print money. That's the crazy thing about like D2C and tech is so dramatically different. Tech is, I've got this vision, build this thing, there's a mission behind it, etc. People from the D2C world tend to come from their first YouTube video being, do you want to learn how to make money online while wearing your underwear at a laptop? And so for them, really, I'm very fortunate to have spent time in those two worlds. That's a whole lot of different episode for sure. But yeah, if there's talk about a tool to help you print money, this $20 a month tool, just the one, you don't have to try them all. Even the one, Perplexity is pretty cool too, though. Yeah, if you want to talk about printing money, whew, boy.
Oh, cool.
Wonderful. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down together.
Yeah, enjoy so much. Yeah, it's always fun to talk to you guys.